Well, it's 7 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started. We usually have some latecomers who are new to MNR, Monday Night Reading, but I'm going to go ahead and get started anyway because we have a few extra excerpts today, and I want to get everything rolling. So welcome to Monday Night Reading. I wasn't able to be here for the last one for John Briggs because I had COVID, man, it sure takes you down. So I'm so excited to be here today. Tonight, we are so lucky to be doing Monday Night Reading for Marie-Helene, or as we know her, MH, Dr. Pelletier, for her book, The Resilience Plan, A Strategic Approach to Optimizing Your Work Performance and Mental Health. So MH is an alum of Top 3 Book Workshop. This book was published by Ph.D. Macmillan, and we couldn't be more excited to share. I just want to, for those of you who are new to Monday Night Reading, this is an idea I came up with because so many nonfiction authors do not get a chance to do readings in support of their book like fiction authors do. So I said, well, let's change that. And that became Monday Night Reading, and it is a beloved part of our calendar every year. We do them usually the first of the month, but we made an exception for MH because she was in New York City. I'm still sad that I wasn't able to be there because I'm only 20 miles. But in New York City doing fabulous launch things, and so we couldn't do the first Monday of the month. That said, we do have it the first Monday of the month. And in fact, our next Monday Night Reading is with Amy Kemp, who I think is here. Yeah, wave. Okay, awesome. So MH, welcome to Monday Night Reading.
Thank you.
I know you attended some in the past, and now here you are having your own.
I know I opened the chat to see what people will say. Usually I open it to type my things, but now yeah, it's wonderful.
Yeah, so throughout today, you'll get links in the chat. Laura Stone, our Dean of Students, and just the most magnificent cheerleader, will be putting links in the chat so you can get your own copy of the Resilience Plan. This is one of those books that it's really more like, let me get one for me, one for my friend, one for my colleagues. It really is a game changer of a book. So she'll be putting links in the chat throughout, as well as links to how to connect with MH. One other little note is we love to get positive feedback in the chat. Those of you who have been here before, you know the drill. You can show the way forward, the lines, the moments, the thoughts that resonate with you. And then we always share the chat with the author, which is really nice for the author to have. So MH, let's get started. I am going to ask you a question I haven't asked you in a while, but I think you were pretty used to answering it. And that is for you to share the fundamentals for your book. So that would be, who is your reader? What is your core message to your reader? And what is the promise of this book?
Yes. So I wrote this book for professionals and leaders who accomplish so much every day, but they are looking for something to give them an edge at work and in their personal lives. Then the core message, which is, yes, at the back of the book, everyone,
Yes.
resilience. Yes, resilience is not a given. You need a strategy. And the promise is that at the end of the book, you will have a custom personal resilience plan that will give you the edge you need in your personal and professional life.
I have to show this again. This is the core message right there on the back of the book. I mean, you know that's a good core message when it makes it to the back of the book in the colored text and everything. You worked hard for that core message and you carried it through so beautifully. So MH, I think we should start the readings. Everybody, we're going to do a few excerpts and then some questions in between. So we're going to get going. Why don't you set up this first excerpt, MH?
Okay. So the book has 9 chapters. This is chapter 1. The title of chapter 1 is You're Fabulous and at Risk. And this is the beginning of chapter 1. As soon as I step into the river, the current grabs my legs and pulls me off my feet. The force is so strong, I have no control. The river roars and rushes around me. I can't beat it. I am at the river's mercy. My husband, Nick, and I love mountaineering, and we had embarked on an 8-day traverse in the Canadian Rockies. 7 days earlier, at the end of day one, we had come up that same river. It rushed down from the mountain and was just wide enough so that we would have to take a dozen steps in it. We came up with a plan to get across based on our strengths. Nick went first, then me. It was difficult, but we made it. Now, as the river decides my fate, everything slips into slow motion. I see myself standing on the other side of the riverbank, feeling victorious. Depleted after days on the trail, that memory seems years behind me. We had started out on snow-packed trails. The farther up, the less snow we ran into, until eventually there was no snow and no river, which meant soon we would be out of water. I began to get dizzy from dehydration. Nick and I did everything we could to keep me going, but by day 4, we had no choice but to turn back. I couldn't will myself to keep going, and I hated it. It was almost worse than the dehydration. At day 8, we were exhausted and barely speaking because we were in self-preservation mode. We arrived back at the river again, and it was higher from melting snow and more tumultuous. Not being able to hear each other over the sound of the rushing water, we could only wave and sign at each other. Nick went first, again, and gestured that he would come back for me. No, I shouted fruitlessly and pointed, "Stay there, I will come to you." That was the last thing I said before the river pulled me in. Where I was once confident and strong, now I was paralyzed with fear. Will the rushing currents knock me against the rocks? Does Nick see me? What if he can't get to me? I might drown. Suddenly, a force grabbed me by my backpack and threw me out of the water on the other side of the river. It was Nick, of course. We sat on the ground, catching our breath, staring at each other. We knew what could have happened. That could have been my last day. I learned an important lesson at the river that day. The biggest difference between day 1 and day 8 was not the river, it was us. By day 8, we had abandoned the strategies that had kept us safe. We had divided. We had tried to do it all on our own. We, or I, just assumed that we would be able to face whatever happened. It works the same way in our work life. Most of us have an eye on our resilience when things are mostly fine. Like on day 1, we can be very good. Where we get caught is on day 8, when more things are going on and we have more unexpected and larger demands, and we are not as attentive to what we need to do to stay resilient. You're already there. You're already at day 8. You are at risk of burnout, exhaustion, or being swept away by the forceful currents of your personal and work life. I know this because as a doctoral level registered psychologist with an MBA who has focused on workplace mental health for my entire career, I have mostly found myself working with professionals and leaders. I have seen the impact of ever-increasing demands in the absence of deliberate attention to resilience. Initially, alertness, ability to make decisions, and concentration appear to be exactly the same. or even better. Yet, all these are getting taxed. You just don't see it yet. If the demands continue, then you may see the impact. For example, some things fall through the cracks. You make a suboptimal judgment call, which you typically don't do, or you need to reread the documents because your mind can't stay focused. These are early signs to pay attention to, but you ignore them because you have no time. As accomplished high achievers, we tell ourselves we can handle it. And we keep telling ourselves this even when the demands on us change. The reality is that you are likely already affected by all the demands you face, whether it is marginally, moderately, or significantly. You're already there. It's not your fault, and it's understandable. You also may not put much stock in your own wellness. Sacrifices must be made, after all. You know that you should eat healthier, get more sleep, exercise, see friends. First, you don't have time. Second, and most importantly, whenever you've done these things, nothing changed. And you've tried looking at the situation from various perspectives. You are resourceful and solution-oriented. Still, nothing changes. Here are some comments I've heard in my individual coaching sessions, team coaching sessions, and events where I've presented. I always tell myself I can push through. I'll do self-care when I have time. I can't have anxiety or stress, so I'll just ignore it. I don't need to focus on my needs because I am strong. The culture is the problem. These comments are not just coming from my clients. I have also fully believed each of these before. Particularly being a psychologist, I have, for example, in the past, assumed more internal power to change things than what was realistic in some contexts, and I have been burnt. Most professionals and leaders assume they are resilient and don't need to do anything about it, and yet the river rises. What you can handle one day may become impossible down the road. The truth is, you can't wing self-care or will yourself to be resilient. You need a custom mental health strategy around your personal life and work life.
Yes, what a good open. That is a classic immediate connection, great storytelling, connection to core message. Get it all out there in the first few pages. Example. Yes, wonderful. Okay, MH, I want to hit you with a question.
Okay.
It actually cues up, I think, the next excerpt. But when we were, I mean, the best part of my job, aside from this, getting to see authors come to fruition, is just getting to see your stuff first before anyone else does. That is my biggest perk. So I'm always trying it. I'm always, oh, that was, writing notes to myself about things I should try. And one of the concepts, this, I've talked about this with you many, many times. One of the concepts that blew my mind when you shared it while you were working on the book was the concept of supply and demand. Mm-hmm. It never occurred to me that we could look at our own personal resources as what are our supplies and what are our demands, and see how that might be uneven. And that was just, even writing it down was helpful without necessarily even seeing what to do about it, but just acknowledging the reality. So why is it helpful to just acknowledge the reality?
Yes, because we don't. What happens is a lot of the time when we've accomplished so much and we continue to accomplish so much, part of what drives this is a bit of an optimistic perspective, right? We can do this, no problem. And then barriers happen, but you're like, yeah, it doesn't matter, pushing through, keep going. So it's this sort of it's a positive, optimistic bias in some ways that allow entrepreneurs to just do the things, even if there were lots of obstacles. And it's very useful. It's beautiful. However, at the same time, pushed too far, what it means is we actually minimize actual demands we have, or disregard them, or think they're not important and all this, or think that they have zero impact. And so that becomes a liability, because then we don't see the reality as it is. And because we do not, then of course we do not need to take any actions either. And we just carry on until we don't have a choice.
And part of supply and demand, the other concept that blew my mind was context. And you have a great story in the book. You're not going to read it today, but I encourage everybody to get the book. There's an incredible story in there about how MH realized how context plays a part. So that supply and demand list is actually always changing. And so you explained to me that why doesn't something work? Like, so, okay, if your friend tells you, or you hear your doctor tells you, you should meditate or you should do this thing. And then it's just, you're just not getting the results as you suggested in that reading. You know, why is this not working? Because you haven't considered the context that is you. And it's simple. This is a simple concept, but it never occurred to me, oh, everything has to be custom. And that's why you wrote this, was to help us create our custom plan, not what you tell us we should do. So I want to make that clear. In this book, MH walks you through how to create the plan for you, not to follow her plan.
Mm-hmm.
So this that I want that to be crystal, because no one can know the context except you, which is different for everybody here. That also blew my mind. I think you have an excerpt about supply and demand, yeah?
Okay, wait, that would be maybe not the second one. Is it the second one? 2 seconds. Let me jump. I will jump to the third one then. That's okay.
Oh,
So,
no, that's okay. Just do the next one. Just set up the next one. That's okay.
yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
well, we will come back to it then. But for right now, then the second one, which is still in chapter 1, just another part of chapter 1, but connects with what AJ was just talking about, the overall direction of needing a strategic plan and what the components are. And yes, looking at your supply and demand will be part of it. So the title of this section is Your Strategic Resilience Plan. You can think about your overall resilience as a ratio of your supply versus your demands. Supply here refers to the ways in which you increase your health and energy. These tend to include healthy life choices, pleasurable activities, and investing time in what you value. A demand is anything that requires energy from you, whether it's something positive that you have wished for or something negative you would rather not have. Examples of demands include planning a wedding or an international trip, as well as dealing with a workplace conflict or going through a divorce. I refer to this as the supply-demands ratio. I use demands because they are numerous and coming from different sources, and your awareness of all your sources and all the demands within these sources is vital to the success of your strategic resilience plan. A key to working towards a healthier ratio is having clarity on your overall personal situation. Just telling yourself that you need to meditate, even though you're right, research supports it, isn't sufficient to make it happen. Looking to change and increase every aspect of your self-care is unlikely to be sufficient in a context in which it's not possible to meet your demands. The key is this: you are missing from your own plan. Given that your overall situation involves both you and your context, so in effect, multiple variables, having clarity on your situation is necessary for designing your approach. And given that you and your context are complex, your approach likely requires a plan that takes various forces into account. What we need is to bring together elements from psychology and elements from business strategy. Resilience is not a given. It's a strategy. You need a custom strategic resilience plan, a plan as unique as your DNA. DNA is a molecule inside your cells that contains the genetic instructions that make you you. You are likely familiar with the image of the double helix that is DNA. When I started researching symbols in nature that could help me create a visual model for strategic resilience, I discovered a surprising symmetry with the elements of my framework. Each DNA molecule has two linked strands, like the sides of a ladder. The rungs on that ladder are constructed from 4 chemical bases. In your strategic resilience plan, you also have 2 linked strands, your personal life and your professional life. These are the sides of your ladder. And the 4 bases that form your ladder's rungs are your supply, your demands, your values, and your context. As you create your strategic resilience plan, you will need to gain insights into those bases. Your sources of supply, what gives you energy, your sources of demands, positive ones included, both in the present and in the future, your values, what's most important for you in life, your internal and external contexts and how these influence, both support and challenge, your goal of increased resilience. Here's the truly remarkable aspect of the DNA molecule model. As I discovered the helix as a symbol of resilience, in nature, plants form helixes to get around any impediment in their own growth. In other words, they use helixes to thrive despite the challenges of the environment. This is also what your strategic resilience plan will do for you. Mallory is a very successful professional and leader. She told me that she used to love her work, but felt that her calendar was out of control and had been the case for the past 6 months. She knew what she should do, but was not doing it. As she consulted with me and implemented the framework I share in this book, everything changed. To her amazement, creating the plan did not take long, and monthly maintenance takes 2 minutes. Why does it take 2 minutes? Because after her initial reflection, she realized precisely and more realistically where her sources of supply and demands were, and the reality of her context and her values served as a guide to make choices. She was soon back to her usual energetic self. I have clarity, Mallory told me. I moved from my endless to-do list to a clean have-to-do list and one-to-do list, and I ditched the rest. I implemented my actions, including experimenting with solutions I had dismissed in the past that actually make a material difference. And this is so much better. I wish I had not done this 6 months ago. It's great to have it now and moving forward. By the end of this book, you will have a strategic resilience plan of your own that will give you the edge you need at work and at home. With a strategic approach, you can lead your workplace mental health now and into the future, which will have an impact in both your work and personal life. You won't have to will yourself to move forward. You'll be better able to navigate even the most unexpected demands. And you will have more resilience to traverse any terrain on any day.
Awesome. I saw comments in the chat about the DNA model. You can't really see it clearly, me holding up the book, but you have to get the book because you can see the contextual model in the book, and then that really brings it. But I'm glad that you were all able to see that from just listening. That's great. So MH, you have a very busy life. You speak all the time. You have all the other work you're doing. You have your family. You travel. So how did you fit this in? Considering the resilience plan, you had to change your context to try and finish a book, which, as we all know, is no small feat. So how did you adjust your own supply and demand and so forth to make that work?
Well, exactly. The short answer is I did not fit it in. I changed what was there.
Right.
And I've had people ask me this also because everyone's life is already full slash overflowing. So, you know, so yeah, no, for me, well, as you know, AJ, we had conversations 2 rounds before I said, okay, now is the time where I can do it. And as I realized, I was just getting lots of information from AJ and others on the time commitment and looking at my schedule and when I could do it. So just a lot of adjustment for me and planning for it. That's what allowed me to create this space. And for me, not only that made it possible, but it did make it one of the most enjoyable professional experiences of my life. I told you this, but I will say it to everyone all the time. Yep, absolutely was.
I love that. We don't often hear that because writing is difficult, but because you made space and I'm sure you had to keep tweaking. You said you can do a 2-minute adjustment once you have it in place because publishing is, a little widely. It's not a straight line. So I'm sure you had to make adjustments as you went along, yes?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Lots of adjustments. But I was thinking more about the time at when I was in workshop.
Okay.
That was a bit more predictable. We knew when I was talking to you, when I had work to do, that part was a bit more predictable that way. But yeah, no, the rest, different phases have different demands and that required a different plan.
I love that. I love hearing that it was an enjoyable professional experience. That's
Yes.
awesome.
Not easy all the time. Yes, work, challenging, discomfort, don't know where, like the whole thing. Yes. But for me, that's part of it's like learning a new sport. Yes, it's going to hurt at times, but you're still very happy you do it.
Yes, yes. Everybody, I want you to direct your attention to the chat. Laura has given a link to purchase the resilience plan, but also made an important point. One of the best things you can do to support an author is to leave an Amazon review. It can take literally 1 minute. It doesn't have to be perfect. It is not supposed to be a professional review, so you don't have to stress over it. It could be as simple as um, uh, maybe even your favorite chapter or even just one takeaway that you got from it. You can also, a little known fact, amend reviews later. So if you decide later that you wanted to add something, you could. Never leave a review, just FYI. If you're an author, just FYI, there's a lot of them here, so I want to put that out. If you're an author, practice good literary citizenship, and if you do not or if you cannot genuinely leave a 4 or 5 star review, walk on by. Keep going. No reviews needed. But for MH, this is 5 star right here. This is a 5 star. Please do take. It's 1 minute, y'all. I know it can be intimidating to leave the review, but it's for authors, getting an Amazon review is a little bit like pulling teeth. We might ask 20, 30 times to just get one. So that's one thing you could do today, by the way, if you feel moved to do it, or maybe this week, put it on your list. That would be amazing. Oh, thank you, Pam Harper. That's great. Leaving a review. Okay, MH, let's do excerpt number 3. Will you set this up for everybody?
Yes, absolutely. And just back on while I get there, the review piece, I have to disclose before working with you, I had never done this. I learned of the importance of reviews here. I learned to do them. And my very first one, because I was so like, oh my God, I am leaving a review. This is a massive deal. I didn't use my name. I was like, okay, like, this, yes. So, because you can change your name, you can say someone in Canada or whatever, right? So I did that because I was like, oh my God, such a big deal. And of course, now I've done many and no, it isn't. But the first time it helped me. So if It is your first
A
time.
good tip. You don't have, you can have use an alias for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay. Next little piece we'll read is part of chapter 4. Title of chapter 4 is Supply, Demands, and You. So it's specifically about that. But it's a part that is within the chapter. So this particular section is titled Report Accurately to Yourself on Your Sources of Supply and Demands. Heard from a leader. Work is no busier now than before. No idea what's wrong with me. The balance between optimism and realism can be complex. With the exception of lawyers, for whom realism is often adaptive, most professionals and leaders are more on the optimistic side and believe that they balance both. In my experience, many fall significantly more on the optimistic side, and that would include me. This mindset has several advantages. For example, entrepreneurs and intrapreneurs, those who start something within an organization, would often never start the things they do if they did not tip towards the optimistic side. When it comes to your resilience, tipping too far towards optimism can be a liability. As you assess and report to yourself on your particular resilience context, the tendency to overestimate your sources of supply and underestimate or even completely miss your sources of demands can leave you with a very reliably invalid assessment of where you stand. This, in turn, leads to an inaccurate perspective on the risks you're taking. Lynn is the professional who told me, work is no busier now than before, no idea what's wrong with me. She values great work and has mostly had the chance to do just that in her career so far as an IT leader. As we started to assess her overall demands context, she mentioned that she had just been asked to cover for her boss's maternity leave, something she had done a couple of years prior. This came with a decrease in other responsibilities, and she felt very comfortable with that. The reality is it, she said, that's it. Even though she felt comfortable with her demands, they were still demands. When I asked Lynn about the non-work part of her life, she mentioned that she had recently decided with her partner to get married. A positive demand, but still a demand. A good friend of hers, whose family was out of the country, had just been diagnosed with severe anxiety and was grieving her dad. So Lynn connected with her regularly. She loved her friend and wanted to do this for her, but it was still a demand. As all this was going on, and for several reasons, Lynn had stopped some of her regular activities. I've stopped exercising. I haven't connected with my friends, especially the people who are doing great. And the other day I realized it had been weeks since I had done anything for myself. Lynn underestimated the demands at work and in her personal life, and overestimated her supply, which minimized the necessity to prioritize and increase supply. I want you to keep your optimism. I just want you to pair it with a more realistic perspective, which in the end allows you to take more effective actions. These actions will lead to positive outcomes, thereby feeding your self-efficacy and further supporting optimism from a more realistic perspective, as Dr. Martin Seligman has found in his work. Take an honest look at your sources of supply and demands. This exercise will likely require about 15 minutes of your time at the most, but quite possibly 3 minutes. First, start a list of your sources of supply. Sources of supply often represent protective factors. actions we implement that increase our energy and health. The four most powerful ones we know from research are physical activity, cardio, strength training, and meditative activity, nutrition, time with people we enjoy spending time with, and sleep. There are other areas. For example, you could increase your supply by protecting your boundaries, by spending time in nature, or by doing arts if you enjoy that. It's important to know that even if you do these additional activities, the four most powerful activities have received the most empirical support. It does not mean that they are the only powerful supplies, but it does mean that they are the ones research points to most consistently. So the associated return on investment is more likely. Next, scan your daily, weekly, and monthly life over the past and next few months for anything that demands some of your energy. Look at both your work and personal contexts. At work, you may have a few difficult or challenging projects on your list, or you may be missing a team member or a colleague needs to be off work, so you need to cover for their absence. Or it could be in your personal life. Maybe your child is sick, your partner is in a career transition, your parents need more help, or good friends around you are moving or leaving a relationship. You may be managing a household, either concurrently with other things or exclusively right now, which could involve raising children, supporting a partner, and managing finances over which you have little control. And there are larger, at times chronic demands like a pandemic. All these represent demands on your energy. Keep going a bit. Okay, one more. Example, sources of supply and demands. Professionals and leaders tend to fall into traps when I ask them to identify their sources of supply and demands. The main problem with assessing your supply is that you overestimate it because you're feeling fine. I'm feeling good, which means I've got a lot of supply and don't need to do more. Plus, I don't have time. You also don't create buffers. I'll have 30 minutes between these two meetings, so I'll go for a run. And you don't create plan Bs. So I don't have time to go for a run, so I'll skip exercise today. This means that you may end up taking actions on the supply front that are easy to do, thinking it's sufficient. I did eat salad on Monday, so I'm good for this week. These traps all lead to the outcome of not implementing the actions that would have increased your supply. On the demand side, you do the opposite. You underestimate the impact of the amount of demands you have. You say, I can handle this too. Bring it on. And the moment it's on your plate, you realize the impact. You also don't estimate well. You say, this will take me 15 minutes. And you're now 2 hours into the task and realize it can't be completed in one shot and will spread over a few days. You're acting as if you have more control over your demands than you do. They are, in fact, more numerous and larger than you thought, including new ones you had not accounted or buffered for. And therefore, it means you're creating even more imbalance between supply and demand. This overall approach is not working.
I love that you have all these excerpts that are really, really setting. I mean, I saw people taking notes that are already getting people thinking about it, and they can actually take action just from this reading. But of course, we encourage you, if it fits your budget, to get the book. So MH, before we do the last excerpt, I would really love to ask you, what has been surprising about your author journey? Just thinking about your journey of becoming an author.
Wow, number of things. But you know what the first thing I'll say is it's both more work and more fun than I thought. That's really, that's probably the key thing. More work. I thought it'd be work and all this, but it is more work. Yes, it's more work, but more fun in so many ways. I mean, this community did not expect this, did not even think, like, did not know. So this is like night and day from me not even thinking that it would be there a little bit. I was not thinking that at all. And it's huge, huge. I've met really good friends, good colleagues. Everyone's so wonderful. It's glorious. So that community. The other piece too is in the more fun category is you've told us, AJ, how as you bring the book into the world, part of what you'll probably want to do is do marketing activities related to the book. So being business oriented, I was thinking, great, yes, absolutely, marketing plan, we will do podcasts and, you know, all the things. Okay. So, and I was seeing it this way, but okay, here's the fun thing. Even if I've done about 50 podcasts, I've got another 50 more coming. If I had not written a book, I would never have spoken to all these people who are around the world, 50% in the US, the rest is Australia, England, France, Luxembourg, everywhere. They love this topic, of course. That's a reason why they invite me or they accept my offer to join them. And seriously, even if nothing happened after this conversation, having had it would have been a beautiful moment in my life. And this is because of this little book things. So yeah, that's remarkable.
First of all, kudos to you. 50 podcasts down and 50 to go. Okay, respect. Yes, that is so good. This is a good time to remind everybody to follow MH on her social media so you can find out about those podcasts and listen to them to learn more. I think we know in the beginning that our new worlds will be open to us as authors, but then we're so caught up in the process of becoming authors and getting the book done that's like a lovely surprise. Oh, you want to talk about that? That's exciting. Yeah. Anything else that you want to share about, just what has this past week meant to you, just getting the book out into the world?
Well, I only truly realized I wrote a book after I left Barnes and Noble. Like, that was the first store. It's not because it's Barnes and Noble, although Barnes on Fifth is quite something. But it's after I left, I was like, okay, so there are shelves with many books, and within these books is my book. And yes, it sounds very obvious, but it was a moment. It absolutely was a moment. So and they were wonderful and all. So that was and then Pam, who's here today, was there, which is glorious. So that was very meaningful. I happened to go there mostly because I had my event with Dress for Success Worldwide. They are my charity partner. I've been involved with Dress for Success for over 20 years in all the ways possible: committee, helping, board chair, donor, like all the possible ways. It's the alignment between their values and mine has been there from the beginning. Have a story on that if you want to hear it, but anyway, and so that led to that beautiful event, and that was extremely meaningful to be in this room full of women. Yeah.
What's the story about Dress for Success?
No, it's just, I think for me, anytime I follow just alignment of what I'm interested in, it just seems to they fall, they work together. All the cards just align nicely. So, but Dress for Success, the way it happened is ages ago, while I was doing my PhD, husband and I, Nick, still same husband, went to Seattle for the weekend. We're in Vancouver, British Columbia, went to Seattle, and we ended up in a hotel by the Kimpton Group. And they were a big supporter of Dress for Success. And in the rooms, there were this little like paper tent, just talking about Dress for Success, donate, whatever. And it was pre-cell phones. I could not take a picture of it. So I stole the tent because I was reading about the values and I was like, oh my God, it's so perfect. It's so exactly what I do, because they support women, financial independence through returning to work, through, yes, outfits, but also career support, coaching, all this preparation. And I was like, so perfect. When I have a moment, this is the organization I'm going to partner with, in my career. So I kept it, finished my PhD. Then I went to look up where they are. And at the time they were exclusively in the US, they had just opened the first affiliate outside the United States of America, which now they have many in many countries. And it was in Vancouver, British Columbia.
Aw.
So that was so cool. So then that's how it started. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I love that. And how was the event? The Dress for Success.
Well, it was wonderful. Michelle, the CEO, was there. So we did a combination of, so she did an introduction. There were a sponsor there. Then there was a woman who's an ambassador who shared her story of resilience. And then had a conversation with Michelle, the CEO, and questions and answers. And actually the two editors from Page Two were in New York. So they were able to join that event, which was really nice and meaningful as well. So yeah, and it was sunny all week. So yeah,
It was. You had the best weather. It was
I
so
know.
good. And then the next day, the president came. Did you know that?
No, sorry, I didn't hear. Sorry.
The next day, our president was in New York.
Oh, no, I did not know this.
Obviously, just tapped into your book launch. Yeah.
Yes, attracted by, yes.
Yes, absolutely. 100%. Okay, let's do one more excerpt. Let's set up the last one.
Yes. So last one. So now we're at chapter 7. Name of the chapter is Implementing Your Strategic Resilience Plan. One of the debates in business strategy is about determining which is most important, strategy or execution. Is it best to have a solid strategy and execution can be average, or have an average strategy executed strongly? We could easily fall into thinking that if we have a strategy, execution will or should naturally occur. Not the case. You will need to not only evolve your strategy over time because things change, but also actively manage the execution of your strategy. I have seen firsthand over my years as a psychologist, consultant, and executive coach that successful execution connects strongly with strategy. Vic is a highly specialized, high in demand professional. They had designed their plan carefully and successfully implemented it over 24 months. Then Vic came to me saying they had no momentum. One of their pillars was physical health, and one action was doing 4 30-minute cardio workouts per week. Most weeks, they had successfully implemented this and felt great about it. Yet now they had no momentum. I asked a bit more about the context. Since when and what had changed in that time frame? Turns out that in the previous 5 weeks, the work demands from their various contracts had all increased at the same time temporarily. So they had worked 12-hour days every day. Initially, they were able to maintain the physical activity cadence, but they rapidly found themselves at best making it 2 times per week and sometimes once only. I asked them what they would say to a colleague if their colleague told them, I used to exercise 4 times per week, but in the past 5 weeks, I've worked 12-hour days and only exercise once or twice per week. I'd say it's amazing, they said. They had maintained momentum, but had just adapted it to the new context in which the demands were significantly different from those considered when the plan was designed. For Vic, we discussed the benefits of having a second version of their plan because while these phases were rare, they had happened before and were likely to happen again. The second version took minutes to create because Vic now had clarity. Having the plan, however, put Vic back in a more mindful and deliberate place because of the realistic appraisal of their new context, in addition to continuing to build their self-efficacy. By nature, Your current plan is specific to your current context. Your goal and your values may remain relatively stable, but the sources of supply and demands and the internal and external forces affecting your context may change. Remember, you are creating a plan that is unique to you, just as your DNA molecule is unique to you. As you grow and as you encounter new challenges, your helix will twist and turn to stay stable and strong as you adapt it to new contexts. AG, keep going or pause there? Keep going. Okay, next section. Optimize the implementation of your plan. You have your goal, your strategic pillars, and your actions. Strategy is only as strong as its execution. While all the conscious efforts we make in crafting realistic and achievable goals are necessary, we now know from research that we can have an impact on the less conscious parts of our brain to move us towards our goals. There is a lot that your brain decides for you without your conscious input. This is very adaptive given the millions of decision points we encounter every day. One interesting and important fact is that these decisions happening without our input are not always on message, aligned with what we've set out to do consciously. If you've ever taken a test to discover your unconscious biases, you likely discovered that despite the fact that you hold very clear values consciously, your test results revealed choices that are not aligned with these values. For our purposes, this means that the more we can support the subconscious processes in the direction of our goal, the better. Choice architecture has been studied by Dr. Wendy Wood, an expert on habits. The concept refers to creating a context that helps you make choices aligned with your goal. Concretely, this means setting things up in your environment so it will be even easier for your brain to take the actions you set out to accomplish. Ben had made a commitment to himself to bring yoga into his morning routine. He knew and had experienced the benefits, yet the habit was not taking root. He then decided to implement as many aspects of a choice architecture around this action as he could. Going through his morning routine, he placed his yoga clothes between his bed and his bedroom door, laid his yoga mat out at its specific location the night before, and had his yoga app ready to launch. As research had predicted, he found himself turning his intention into action, at times for a very short time, but with a frequency that was much higher. Jess had made a personal commitment to manage actively the work demands coming their way. This involved receiving requests and systematically responding either with a decline or with an engagement to look at this new demand in the context of other demands and to get back to the requester with an update in 24 hours. To support this choice, Jess had a template email response and had developed a verbal response that they practiced, had written on a note by their computer, so it would be easily accessible. When going to work in person, they had an elastic band on their wrist to serve as a physical reminder and symbol that the ratio of of demands and supply could be overstretched and required their active management. The habit of accepting all new demands had been strong for Jess, but this reminder and the additional step in their response process was what they needed to slow them down just enough to align their behavior with their values and plan.
Okay, we'll stop there. There's so much juicy practical application in here about how you optimize and adjust, and I cannot stress enough how influential this book has been on my own life. I hope you will pick up a copy if it fits your budget. MH, before we close, I have to ask you the question I ask all Monday night reading authors, which is, what is the change you want to see in the world through this book?
Yes. More people think more strategically about their resilience, talk more strategically, make strategic choices. And the more they do that, the more, even more people around them will do the same.
I love that. I
Mhm.
love that. On a personal note, I just want to say I've been hearing about this for over a year and I'm still trying to tweak it. And I think that's okay. So if you're reading, or MH tells me it is anyway, if you're reading it and you feel like you have to get it right all at once, you don't. I think it can have a big impact even if you just do a little bit. So at least it has for me. Um, Again, please pick up a copy if you can. I want to thank Laura for helping us run tonight, everybody here for showing up, MH for gracing us with her presence and this lovely reading. If you loved Monday Night Reading, our next one is Amy Kemp, who's up. Let's see, the registration, March 3rd. Registration is in the chat. We do ask you register so that we can keep this room safe for everybody with no Zoom bombers. All right, MH, my wish for you is that this book gets into more hands than you ever thought possible, and that you are receiving letters, emails, messages from readers for years to come.
Thank you. Thank you very much, AJ. It's been an absolute treat to work with you and this community. I've not read your comments yet, of course, because we're talking and all, but I want to thank you in advance. I know the types of things people write in these things, and thank you. I appreciate it.
Wonderful. Thank you, everybody, for supporting authors. We will see you at the next one. Good night.